Easter teaching number 4, the arrest. Before we continue, it must be said that 22 points of Sanhedrin law were about to be violated when it came to the arrest and trial of Jesus. These laws were to protect Jewish citizens, and they are actually very fair and considerate laws. It's just a shame they weren't put into operation for Jesus. As each law is violated during the teaching, I will tell you. These are listed in totality during the introduction to this study. After the Passover meal, Jesus and his disciples retired to the Garden of Gethsemane on the slopes of the Mount of Olives. After a meal and 4 cups of wine, the disciples found it impossible to stay awake. Jesus, on the other hand, knew what was going to befall him, and we are told that he was in such anguish that he sweated drops of blood. This is an actual medical term called hematohidrosis. An angel came and ministered to him and strengthened him for what he was about to endure. Judas hadn't been to buy provisions. Rather, he went to the religious leaders who took him to Pilate to provide Pilate with the indictment to secure the cohort of soldiers for an arrest. Here, the first Sanhedrin law was violated. Rule number 1. There was to be no arrest by religious authorities that was effected by a bribe. A Roman cohort of soldiers was anywhere between 300 and 600 men. There were also the servants of the high priest, other Jewish officers, and Sanhedrin members. What a sight that must have been, marching from Jerusalem over to the Mount of Olives. Considering the leaders wanted him arrested without the crowds being aware. It may have been late in the evening, but 300 soldiers plus, with torches and lanterns, would be difficult to miss. Rule number 2 that was broken. There were to be no steps of criminal proceedings after sunset. Jesus didn't flinch when he saw the arresting party approaching. He went out to meet them. He asked who they were looking for. John 18 verse 5 tells us that when they answered, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus replied, I am. This, of course, was the name of God in the Old Testament. At this, all those in the arresting party fell backwards as dead men. Jesus' deity shone through, showing that he was in control and that he was allowing them to arrest him willingly. When they all got up off of the ground, Judas wanted to earn his money and came forward and kissed Jesus with the kiss of betrayal. Then Peter, in defence of Jesus, pulled out his sword and cut off the ear of the servant of the high priest. Jesus, however, put the ear back into place and healed it, saying to Peter that even then, if Jesus wanted, his Father would send more than 12 legions of angels to rescue him. But he had to drink this cup, as it was his Father's will, and for the fulfilment of prophecy. Luke chapter 22, verse 52 says that Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guards, and the elders, Am I leading a rebellion, that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you, and you didn't lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns. Here we have another reference to darkness. Darkness to the Jewish mind being the absence of light, representing those who do not have eternal life because they are unknown to God. Darkness, a symbol of evil, spiritual blindness, sin and guilt. Those in the party were chief priests, elders and Sanhedrin members in violation of rule number 3. Judges or members of the Sanhedrin were not allowed to participate in an arrest. Matthew 26 verse 56 says, But all this came to pass, that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples left him and fled. At this point the disciples were so frightened that they dispersed and ran away. Jesus was bound and marched from the garden to await his first trial.